Well, hello everybody. Good evening and welcome back to the New Biker channel and welcome to this live stream. We have some very interesting guests today. Special guest today is Cornish Motorcycle Diaries or Andy. We also have Exeter Rider and Western Super Motor Vlog in the live stream. Just very quickly, wanted to let you know that next weekend is the Saddlebags social ride. Planning to go down there, planning to go on the Himalayan. So I hope to see some of you there. And been busy today with some activities, hoping to marshal the Hackney Half Marathon, and maybe there will be a video on that coming up soon. But without any further ado, let me bring in the guests for today, and let's get this started. Hello.
Hello.
Hi,
Hello,
Andy.
Nick.
Hi,
Hello.
Steve. Hi, Phil. Great to see you guys.
Yeah, too.
Yeah.
You too.
And I'm looking forward to meeting in person next weekend.
That would be good.
Are you guys going to have good weather in the southwest? Because I'm used to very sunny weather in London.
It's always
It's
good
very
weather.
sunny down
You know
here.
that.
You need to pack your passport if you're coming anywhere down here, and make sure you eat your cream teas the right way around, because there'll be trouble.
Well, we're
Yeah.
going to talk about that later. I don't want to start anything, but I think looking at the four of us, I think we're going to be on an even score on that. So stalemate.
No, there's no even score. It's science.
Yeah, it's science. Cream always goes first.
Oh, I can hear the marching feet and the flaming torches being lit as we speak.
Yeah.
I'll
That's
set
a common
Cornish
occurrence over
oath.
here. Yeah. Anyway, how's you guys' weekends been? Anybody been on a nice ride today? Oh, yesterday?
Yeah, I had a lovely ride out today. Took the sports drought, get a few miles under it, get it all social ride ready, and filled it up, put it back in the garage, polished it back up, and I'm ready to go next week.
Brilliant.
Nothing
Steve?
for me today. I've been down Dawlish with the family, and I saw an old guy broken down in Sainsbury's, so I went and helped him because the RAC wouldn't help him because he ran out of MOT. So and he said to me, "Well, that's a bit strange because I sent it in for a service last month. So why didn't they MOT it?" And I was like, "Probably because he didn't ask them to MOT it." You know, he was very he shouldn't have been on the road. He was one of those.
That's one of the things I have to do in my job, is tell people to stop driving, and it's a big thing, because most people, what they always say is, "I only go to the shops and the GP surgery," and you look at their car and there's sort of like dents on all four corners, like a Dodgem car. You thinking,
yes,
you know.
It's a bit like the scene from Wolf of Wall Street, isn't it, with the Lamborghini? Have you seen that when he crashes it because he's high as a kite?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
He thinks he's got it home safe, and then he goes out and has a look, and it's like in pieces.
Yeah. So yeah. But yeah, so I got the car going anyway. It was just an immobilizer situation basically. But part of me was thinking, well, should I just leave it and get them to get a taxi home and get somebody else to sort it out? But anyway, he knows he needs his MOT doing now, so yeah, silly really, but takes all sorts.
I mean, you'll be surprised. We get, because I do the IM coaching, and you get people who turn up and you're doing the pre-ride checks, and you ask them, so what are your tire pressures, and when was the last time you checked them? And he says, oh no, the garage did that last service.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah. Basic stuff, isn't it?
We have to tell them no, every week, please. Seem to have lost Phil. Oh, there he is.
When I picked my bike up from the dealers and checked the tires on returning home, the back tire was it 6 psi over, and the front tire 2 under. You know, and they'd filled the wrong amount of oil in the oil tank, so I had to ask them to send me some oil, which they had left over because they're a Kawasaki dealership. They had to get some oil in specially for me. And so they had a load left over, which they'd never use again. So I got sent it. So I've now got a big box full of oil. So I don't think I'll need any for years now.
Get on.
Very good.
A giveaway.
Did you go out anywhere nice this weekend, Andy?
No, well, not on the bike, because we know where it is. It's in Thor Motorcycles, awaiting some jiggery pokery by them. I think probably all I'll get is talking about an ECU reflash. I think there's been a lot of talk. That always seems to be the solution to everything these days, doesn't it? Get your ECU reflashed or whatever it is. But I don't know. Just have to wait and see. So fingers crossed I'll get it back for next weekend.
Okay, so I mean that brings us nicely into talking a little bit about your channel. I know that a couple of your recent videos, and one of them you were comparing the BSA with the Guzzi.
Oh yeah.
And you've decided, you were making a decision, and you decided to stick with the Gold Star and chop in the V7. Is that right?
Well, funnily enough, my next video, which is the one I've got just about finished now, and that'll be probably coming out midweek. I do talk a bit about buyer's remorse and whether, why we make these decisions, because it's like you've got to the point where you think you've got the perfect bike, fits you just right amount of power, handling it, and then you're in a dealer's and you see a bike that's even more perfect, or you hear a review and you think, oh, I want that. And then just one thing leads to another and another, and then you have another bike. And then, a couple of years later, something comes out and you go, oh, that's the perfect bike for me. So on and so forth. I know. So, so I do talk a little bit more about that in the forthcoming video about, why we just have this endless cycle of repeat, wash, rinse, and so forth. But, kind of ways, I don't think I'll be buying any more bikes. I've got to the stage of, I think, financially there's an awful in the pot, and also I think your needs change as you get older, don't you? Not planning on doing any sort of major touring or anything like that. And trip around Cornwall is about the furthest I'm going to go this year, I should think.
I think it's space in the garage as well, isn't it? There's only so much you can put in the garage. Certainly my garage, there's a lot of stuff for work. It goes in and out. So I'm moving bikes around all the time, and it's a right pain in the what's-it sometimes to try and get to something. I have to pull both bikes out.
I mean, I don't understand what often people say. If you're on a forum, they say, well, I'm thinking about another bike. They say, well, get another one as well. And it's like, A, I don't have enough money, and B, like you, I don't have enough space for it. And I think also, if you have, say, 3 or 4 bikes, the chances are that one or more of them are going to be left fairly well unused, and then they're going to develop all the problems you get with leaving a bike.
Oh, that's the problem.
That's
the problem I've got.
It's a problem. It's a problem I had when I was commuting to work every day on the Himalayan. That was getting lots of views, and the Kawasaki was not getting a lot of views. Now I'm not commuting to work, and so on the weekend there's a Kawasaki that comes out, and I put 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 miles on that in a year, and I have hardly put 500 miles on this in the last year. Phil, how many bikes have you got right now? You got the Sportster, you got the Multi.
Yeah.
You still have that Daytona.
Yeah. No, the Triumph Daytona has gone. I just ran out of time and interest. Why would you want to be building a bike when you've got 2 others to ride? I wanted to be out on the bike, so it's just. I like the idea of having a project, but in reality, I want to ride bikes, not work on them all the time. Not
tinker, yeah. I think I'm the same. I prefer to be able to just press the button and go, rather than think about what bolts you've got to tighten up before you go out.
Exactly. So I've given the project's gone to somebody else now for them to try. But no, I've just got the Multistrada and the Sportster at the minute. 2 completely polar opposites as well. So it's apples and oranges, but they make a fantastic fruit salad together.
It's like the Himalayan and the Kawasaki. It's
yeah.
It's nice to have variation in your bikes.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yes, I've still got your tent.
So Andy, going back a little bit to your channel, you also recently did a video on the Hawkins British Motorcycle
Motorcycle
Museum, which I
museum,
thought was I thought it was quite interesting.
yeah. It didn't get many views though. It's funny, you know, the videos you think are so well constructed, they don't get much interest, and the ones that are a bit ramshackle, they get a load more views. I think it's a case of people just watch what they want to watch. You know,
How dare they?
Well, it's funny. I watched a video. I think it was yesterday, which was 54 minutes long. It was the woman who did it was very scruffy. She was a bit rude, and she was all over the place. The reason why I watched it because I wanted to, because it gave me some valuable information about a possible purchase of a printer. So I think that's, you know, if you do videos on practical things like, you know, changing the oil or something like that, you're always going to get views, aren't you? Because people are always going to be thinking, oh, I've got this bike, I want to change the oil. Has somebody else done a video on it? And put a search up. And so they don't get many views up front, but they probably get repeats. I don't know. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, so sometimes it does take YouTube a while to tune in to what they want to push out. Like if you're mainly a motorcycle channel and then you do a trip video, for example, it takes a long time for the algorithm to kind of know who to recommend that video to, because it does get confused, which is why it's important to, you know, get the description, the title and everything else right. But you'll find over time that video will always gain views, like it does naturally, organically, but at the same time it will start to find its algorithm. You know, it might take a couple of years. Some of the videos I've done I thought were failures, I look back on now and they're doing great, but it does take time. It's a slow burner, YouTube.
Yeah.
And you've done some quite interesting recent videos as well, Steve. I just watched the Transalp one.
Yeah.
So
that was actually a bit of a cock up, that video, because I set the microphone wrong in my helmet, which is why I've taken so long to put it out. It's this time last year I filmed that. No, a bit later actually. But I set the dB level wrong, and I stuck it was nicely shot, but the sound unfortunately has killed the video. So it will still do okay, but
yeah, it's audio is the worst thing, isn't it? And getting it right.
Absolutely.
You know, I bought an attenuating microphone, and I sort of naively thought, well, if the volume is normally too loud, I'll set it at the minimum. And when I got back, there was nothing on it at all.
Oh yeah, we've all done that one.
Yeah, I found a happy medium now, so I've been reasonably happy with the helmet sound quality. What I'd like to have is a microphone for the exhaust, because I think there's a guy in Australia called Motor Fields. He does it like that, and his sound quality is really good.
Yeah. I've done this a few times, depending if I feel like it, because it's a pain to kind of sync everything up. But if you get like an external recorder, stuff it in a bit of foam, and put it in a backpack. That tends to get a good recording of the sort of exhaust note.
And the actual syncing is not too difficult, at least not in Final Cut, because you just make 2 clips a multicam clip, and it sort of does it automatically. It takes a bit of a while.
Yeah. No, I still do everything manually. But I really enjoyed as well, Steve, your one where you went out with Ken. He was on the R8 TGS.
Oh yeah.
And you were on the Himalayan. That was fantastic.
It was a heck of a day.
I want to
be honest with you.
I want to go to that trail with the one that overlooks the sea.
It's wonderful. Honestly, I've been longing to go there for so long now, and I've seen it on other people's videos, and it really is as nice as it looks. There it's a fantastic spot, and relatively just off the main road as well. Would you believe the actual gate to the actual places? Highly recommend it, Neeb. I mean, I haven't got the right bike. I know you're coming down next week, but it would be lovely if we could go up there. And you could have, because you're on the Himalayan, aren't you? Coming down.
Yeah, for my sins, I'm bringing the Himalayan down this time. Yeah,
I'd love to take you up there, but I haven't got the right bike for it, unfortunately. I might get the BMW up there, but I won't get out the other side down the rocks. So
and if I can probably do it if it's dry and not too muddy, because I've only got the original tires, and those are not going to do. They don't do much very well. So as you found out.
Yes, I found that out. Yeah. But like you say, it's good fun, and Ken's such a he doesn't try and trip you up. You know, he knows exactly where your level is, and he'll let you fall off and then think, right, there you go, that's about the limit, really. But it did ruin it on the stock tires for that reason, because there's other things we could have done, and it did make it hard work, but I wouldn't have changed it. It was a good experience. It's
so nice to have somebody like with experience to kind of show you around, isn't it? I mean, I had my introduction with Hippodromes out in Sussex, and it was so nice of him to just give me all the tips and show me the, you know, start me off easy and, you know, give me the feedback. Yes. It was just if your first experience is nice, you're likely to want to try again. If you go and you have a miserable experience, it's likely to dampen your enthusiasm, isn't it? It's Absolutely. So nice to have people.
And let's face it, it's one of those things which you can't do on your own. If you do that on your own in experience, then if you come a cropper, then, you know, it's getting the air ambulance out to you if you're out at range. You know, it's that serious, isn't it? So you've got to go with somebody else, and certainly somebody who knows where they're going. You know, because there's no second guessing then. Because I'll be honest, I'll tell you a story off camera, but I did go out with somebody once, and to say that we upset a farmer once would be an understatement, because he thought he knew where he was going, and unfortunately we was on farmer's land, and it went down like a sack of manure, should I say. So yeah, it's important to find somebody, and if you get the chance to do it and you've got the bike to do it, then I think it's also a good way of learning bike control as well.
Yeah, you know, I'm surprised you're saving that one for a private chat when your recent stripper video.
Yeah, there is more to that one as well. Actually,
you mentioned it.
They're still growing back.
And Phil, I'm very happy to say that, you know, you're putting out videos again. I don't think you did one this weekend.
No, it's really weird. I think the universe is trying to tell me something. But I recorded one a couple of weeks back. Got home, started putting it into the software, and I bored the shit out of my. Sorry, shouldn't swear. I bored myself within 20 seconds, so I binned that one straight away. And then last week I went out, I did a fantastic hour-long run. I thought I can get a good video out of this. There's beautiful scenery, the weather was perfect. Got home and no sound was recorded. So I think the universe is trying to tell me something. I recorded one. I've been out today and recorded a video. I'll see how that comes together this week.
First of all, don't listen to the universe. It's stupid. And second of all, it's my fucking channel. You can swear as much as you fucking want.
Okay.
Oh dear, the floodgates are open.
Hey, they say that swearing is a sign of intelligence, right? I must be smart. You know.
I was watching a program which was hosted by Danny Dyer of EastEnders. That was most entertaining because every other word was fucking. It was all about men's, the whole men. You know, the Andrew Tate. You know, toxic masculinity thing about how men can sort of reinvent themselves.
Yeah. What a lovely fellow.
What colour is your Bugatti?
Yeah. Thing is, what you don't want is you don't want your live stream to descend into the gutter, because there's enough live streams out there that'll do that. So
no. I mean, I listen. We'll keep it high level, but you know, the odd swear word there, it doesn't bother me. I've worked with enough Australians to get used to it. and besides, my channel is not monetized yet. I've got 1,000 subs, but I still haven't hit those 4,000 hours. It just it's teasing me. It's like it goes 3,955, 3,932.
Yeah,
it's like it goes up and down. Geez.
Yeah, it's hard work getting to that. I mean, for me, it was the first 1,000, and I got to 997, and I remember this was back in 2019 August, and I was in the park with my kids, and I thought, come on, just those 3 subscribers, which would normally take me 2 days back then, and I thought, no, I can't have this. And so I said to my lad, go and play football with those lads over there. And sure enough, they had phones on them, didn't they? So my last 3 subscribers to get me to 1,000 subscribers. They was about 10 years old.
Very good.
If you're watching, thank you very much. Yeah.
Yes. Well, they won't be watching my channel because they're not subscribed to me. They're subscribed to you.
Yeah,
But yeah, if you're watching, just tonight, just like take one of my playlists and just start it on autoplay. Go to bed. Just leave it on the mute volume. Just get me the hours.
Yeah.
So, Andy, shall we talk a little bit about your motorcycle history?
Oh, yes.
Did you want me to share some photos?
Yes, why not?
To help us go through that.
Nothing to see here. Move along now.
Well, tell us about this.
Well, that's somewhere in the middle, I think. Bonneville SE, 2009 won that. I've been riding Kawasaki. I know that was just before the Kawasaki Vulcan 900. Yeah, it's a decent bike, but I kind of got rid of it because the front end felt a bit twitchy. But you know, I must admit, I still like Bonnevilles, and I think that's how a motorcycle should look. That picture, by the way, was taken on a camera that was made in 1934, a Leica, which I don't know if that's going to impress anybody or not, but that's my other hobby, photography.
I'm impressed.
That's what I'm very keen on. Yeah, so great little bike in many ways. Sold it and got a bike which had a bigger seat so I could get my other half on the back, and now she never rides on the back of any of my bikes. So bit of a pointless task, really.
I've got a question. Can I go first, Snoop? How does a 1934 camera take a photo like that?
Well, because it was taken on film, which I then developed or had developed and got scanned, which I did myself. And the reason why it looks like that is because it's a very high quality camera, and you know, it's obviously had a little bit of processing, but not that much.
So it would have been German optics, so 1930s German optics. Obviously, in the 1930s, the film technology was not good, right? So when you see a photo from the 30s, it's because the film wasn't good. The actual optics on the cameras were pretty good, right? But with modern film.
Well, actually, that one was taken on a German lens, but a much more modern one by a company called Voigtlander. That's the thing with these old cameras; they still work, so you can put modern lenses on them. So the quality of the picture is very good. And actually, back in the 30s, some of the lenses were very good indeed, and some of the film was too. If you had a big enough camera, you can turn out really good pictures, as you would no doubt see if you look at Ansel Adams or people of that nature. The quality is stunning. Just obviously the speed.
But Ansel Adams was taking on 5 inch by 4 inch. This is 35 millimeters.
8 by 10 in actual fact.
8 by 10. So there you go.
Yes. So yes, things have changed, but still feel affectionate for Bonnevilles. There was one stage where I almost got another one, but I didn't. So you can tell the kind of motorcycle I like anyway. It's not hard to see. Want to show another one?
Yeah. So, hang on. What did I do here? Sorry, because there you go. What's this?
Well, that's Epic Adam. Phil should know what that is. It's a Harley Davidson Sportster.
The Evolution engine.
Yeah, 1996 model. Vibrated like hell. Anything over 75. It's got twin seat. Can you see on the back on the rear footrest? It's got sort of something taped around the footrest. That's so I could put my son on the back, who's then aged. I think this was about 2000, so he would be aged about 1990, about 6 or 7, I think. So that was his first experience of a motorcycle. But at that time, I was seeing a woman who was sort of attached to the biker lifestyle. Maybe kind of put me off biker gangs and biker groups, really, because they really treated her incredibly badly. Just telling me about the summary justice they hand out. So if you sort of can't do something they don't like, they just give you a beating. And this is to a woman. very sort of ways of doing things. So I think the perception of biking and biker lifestyle is it's kind of left-wing counterculture, alternative. It's not. It's very much not. It's very old school, militaristic, typically patriarchal, very, very rule based. It's like the case of you don't go on that ride. That's kind of through sucked teeth and you're expected to do everything when you're supposed to, and there's always a guy who's giving the orders and all that crap. So
I've never understood it. I know I've got a couple friends in a club, I suppose we could call it, and the thing, one's actually just left about a year ago, actually, but I don't see any attraction to it. I don't really see why you would want to put yourself through all those rules and hush society and each to their own.
See, the thing is, all that stuff happens in other types of groups as well. So without boring about group dynamics, those kind of events happen in groups. So even things like bowls clubs, photography clubs, any kind of group where there's a large enough number of people, somebody running it, you get that sort of level of functioning, which is, it's either very chaotic and doesn't function at all, or very rule bound and very restrictive. And so many groups are like that, and there's a lot of research about why it is. But the word is basic assumption. In other words, free for all kind of thing. So that's when we've all been in Facebook groups or other forums where things go to pot and everybody falls out with each other, and it's kind of like handbags at dawn. And that's what happens when they're not properly run.
Hierarchy, human nature. Yeah.
See, somebody's commented, thinks that culture is now gone. Or I beg to differ. Actually, I think it's still very much in.
I think it's still alive.
Yeah. Even St. Austell Bikers is like that.
I've seen enough posts on social media from American people who are associated with American motorcycle gangs specifically. Again, I think there's variety, right? I have people who are in motorcycle clubs in the US who just do fantastic charity work and do really good stuff. But there's also the ones that they still have the whole thing of prospects, and you're having to slave your way through, and depending whereabouts over there you are, there's a massive gun culture associated with it as well.
I think swept under the carpet.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to lump any group of people.
Bikers with a disability, for example, are not like that, and a lot of the other sort of blood bikers and people with sort of a different kind of association. But certainly the backpatch clubs, and of course Outlaws, Hells Angels, they're essentially criminal gangs, I think.
I'm not that brave to put it that way, but yeah.
Well, you know the meaning of the word 1%, don't you? The 1% is the people who wouldn't even give 1% of their money to the US tax agency. So they do things like hide their money in the ground and live a quasi illegal life.
So is that what you get up to on the weekends, Phil?
Me, I'm quite happy to stay clear of this conversation. I'll be honest with you. The phrase 1% actually came from an American governor who stated that 1% of motorcyclists are criminals. Whether they hide their monies, I don't know, but that was where the phrase 1% come from. But no, that's you don't join these gangs or motorcycle clubs with your eyes closed. You know exactly what you're getting into.
Oh yeah.
So it's very easy for us on the outside, or people on the outside, to question it and ask why, but they know what they're getting into. Some people need that camaraderie. Some people need that connection and that support. What I would say, I'm not advocating anything, but those gangs do look after their own. Those clubs do look after their own. Sometimes looking after their own may be seen as going overboard in the way they look after them. But it's a tough life, and some people like that. Sometimes the way it started was from ex-military, and the ex-military needed that level of control. They wanted to be controlled. They wanted to be in a structure where they were told what to do, because they come from an employment and a lifestyle where they didn't know what to do themselves. So
some people want that sense of belonging, don't they?
Absolutely.
I think it's essentially institutionalization, isn't it? Put into the military, it's an institution which has
military.
Yeah, but it's the same in other places as well. Prisons, mental hospitals, very similar actually.
Tell us about this then, Andy.
Okay, so this lady is a friend of mine called Gaynor. She's sat on my Sportster. There's a sad story attached to this because she is no longer with us. She is one of those people who probably needed some structure in her life because she was a very chaotic person, lovely personality, but she used to do things, went off the rails. She ended up with some man who was very, very, very destructive. And she came to visit me one weekend. I was living in Birmingham. And undoubtedly the offer was there, if you like, if you see what I mean. But, it didn't happen in that way. And then, after a very pleasant weekend, she used to come to see me to get away from the problems of life. The shit she was going through, getting divorced, hanging out with this completely unsuitable man. He was also a biker, alcoholic, just generally not very nice. And anyway, she'd seen me that weekend, went down the road, came off the road, hit the back of the truck, went into hospital with brain injury, and 2 days later they turned the life support machine off. And I remember her kids, who were then, I think, 9 and about 4, being led away crying. I remember the sound that the monitor made, beep, 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 beep. And it's pretty awful, really. So a sad situation,
That is
what happens when your life goes to pot and you make some unsuitable choices. I still don't know to this day why she went off that road, because I couldn't see any. I've been past it loads of times, but obviously I feel guilty because I was the last person she saw alive. So yes, a sad story there.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because you said you depending on your choices, and I'm a firm believer that for a few chance events in my history, in my life, a few coincidences, a few chance encounters, or something happening that there was an opportunity that I could take. I could have been in a very different situation myself. Yeah, definitely don't believe that I'm here just because of my charms, good looks, and talent and hard work. There's also an awful lot of luck involved in you surviving and getting somewhere in life.
Well,
Anyway,
yeah.
that's any good news? I think we should move swiftly on.
Still here is the good news. I mean, that's just exactly what Angela says. You learn to adapt and survive, don't you? If you have problems in your life, you solve them. You adapt to change. It's part of a theory about kind of personality, which I sort of ascribe to. That was my first Triumph Bonneville. That was T100 2002 model, pre-fire. And if you looked under the seat near where the tank was, you could see a date which is literally about 3 days before the big fire at the factory in Hinckley. And of course, then after that, they moved production overseas, didn't they? I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, lovely bike that. Yeah, it's got the chrome engine cases, 790 engine, carburetted, of course. Went all over on it, like you did, back in the day.
When was that fire at Hinckley?
2002.
2000, really, that long ago? Right.
Yeah, I know. And of course, they changed everything since then. Now they're made in Thailand mostly, aren't they?
But they're trying to bring it back, aren't they? Apparently, I've
Are they?
heard. Yeah, because there's been a few quality control issues.
Well, there has, hasn't there? I mean, good old Stuart Fillingham highlighted most of them.
Sorry, I'm going to talk about that channel.
No, we'll get into trouble. Well, this Yorkshireman calling in. What's he doing talking about me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Let's next one. Well, those are some nice. These are some nice bikes.
So this was in Ireland. Went did a trip around Ireland in, I think it was 2007 or 8. So that's my Dyna on the left. That's my then partner's Sportster on the right. So yeah, we went all round. Well, pretty much all round Ireland. I remember having a puncture in the Black Valley in Ireland. So went literally middle of nowhere down a track very similar to the one you and Steve were describing, I think, because it was like in Ireland. I think you've been there recently. Back then, you'd be driving along a wonderful road which would have been paid for by the EU, and then the road would just stop, and then you'd be on a sort of single track kart track, effectively. So Ireland's always been a country of contrast, which makes it wonderful. But it's probably not a great bike to be doing touring on. But yeah, so I had a puncture in the Black Valley, so I had the cool breakdown recovery to get me to Tralee, and the breakdown truck driver actually tied it down on his truck, and he damaged the seat doing it. So not only did I have a puncture, I damaged the seat as well. However, on the positive side, we had a very good night in Tralee and saw some fantastic Irish music that night. So yeah, it was a good trip overall. But yeah, not the ideal bike for the kind of terrain that we were encountering in Ireland. I think it might be
Southern Ireland.
Sorry?
Southern Ireland, was it? Or
yeah, Dingle Peninsula, all around there. Beautiful part of the world.
Southwest, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Saddlebags was near there, wasn't he, in his Irish trip recently?
Well, I think the Wild Atlantic Way goes that way, if I'm not mistaken.
And there's what's his name, Bullet Wanderer. He's from that neck of the woods, isn't he?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So this one's from my trip to India. So it was Blazing Trails is the name of the organisation. They're still going in some form, although the owners have split up now. And so there was a group of us, 18 of us. So it was me, a couple called Marianne and Simon Mollett. I'm still friends with Marianne, although she is very, very Asperger's. And that's one of the mechanics working on the bikes. And those mechanics were brilliant. They could fix anything and everything, quite literally. And we're talking about proper altitude here. So a lot of the time we were over 3,000 meters. The conditions were terrifying. Now, I remember I went up a really steep turning on at nearly 3,000 meters and came off and got back on and got help to get back on. Of course, with a group of 18 you did. But I remember saying to Damon Lanson, the co-leader of the trip, said, "Oh, you know, that was really bad off-road." And he said, "You haven't been off-road yet." Counted as a road.
That was the road.
Yeah, it was. And that's the thing with India, even more than Ireland. The roads would literally end, and then there'd be a massive. You'd be waiting by a landslide, and there'd be a digger just digging it out. And then when it was clear, you'd go over the landslide. But sometimes you had to stop because there'd be a massive rock fell down the mountain. It'd be about the size of a piano, and you'd go bounce, 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 another 1,000 feet down. So yeah, it was a great trip. Terrifying in places, but you just didn't think about it. You just kind of got on with it. You know.
A question about that trip, if I may. How much does it cost? I'm not asking how much it costs you, but is it quite a well-priced country to visit and hire a bike?
Once you're in India, everything is dead cheap. So we had a meal in a roadside cafe, I think, in a little town somewhere, and I think it was pretty good curry with all the usual trimmings. Do you know what the price effectively was? 23p.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. So once you get outside the major cities, probably if you're in Delhi, Mumbai, etc., you're going to be paying more. But overall, once you're outside and in the sticks, India is very cheap. That's me with my bullet. I blew it up on the second to last day, and 2 days later, the mechanics had it completely rebuilt.
You've gone from this. Is that from when you dropped it?
No, that's not me. That's another guy. He had an accident, and he was riding down this pass, and it's very steep. So on one side, there's literally nowhere to go apart from 1,000 foot down, and you've got a big rock overhang over you. And basically, he was going on the right side of the road, and the bus was coming the other way on the wrong side of the road.
As they do.
As they do in India. Yes, they do. They do that. But of course, in India, if you have an accident with them, it's always your fault. So what they do is they gather round, a big group of people, and start demanding money off you. So the leaders of the group paid the bus driver off, and I think it's something like 25 quid. You know, so not no, really, yeah.
Sorry.
But otherwise, they can attack you. Apparently, I was told that, you know, if you get in an accident with an Indian, they will attack you if you kind of don't give them some money. So bear in mind, the rules of the road are completely different there. So you have to sound your horn all the time. Yep. So if you're overtaking something, you've got to sound your horn, and that's not considered rude. This is just what you do to let people know that you're there.
But I know. I've been. It's you can't sleep at night because the horns are going on.
Because there's horns going off, but there's sacred cattle in the middle of the road. There's people driving down the road on the wrong side towards you. There's kids. There's everything all the time. But it's amazing place. Amazing.
Some fantastic photos, Andy.
Yeah, this one won a prize actually. This photo, but this is a beggar in Delhi, and they weren't allowed apparently at the time because this is at the time that the Commonwealth Games going on. So they'd apparently cleared all the beggars out to try and make the place look sort of nicer for the foreign athletes and tourists and all that. But there were still beggars. And in fact, I saw a woman with not rabies, leprosy. Saw a woman with leprosy, got no fingers, begging. Still happens in India. Yeah.
He looks like the way I feel.
Oh, bless. So this is the Kawasaki Vulcan, which I bought after the Bonneville, so I could get my other half on the back. And good, soft, comfortable, very comfortable bike. That actually, really comfortable. Not much power, but really, really comfortable. Great for long rides. You know, it's got like a 250-mile tank range. You know, just put your feet on the floorboards and just let it chug along, really. So again, you know, went all over on it, and very well built bike as well. I think Kawasaki.
Nice, I like that.
Yeah, I think Kawasaki don't get much credit for their sort of quality, but I think actually they are pretty well constructed bikes overall. You would agree, Angela?
Well, I haven't had a V-twin Kawasaki, but my one, it's been reasonable. I've had some issues, right? Reliability issues. I had an issue with the subframe, the bolts. I think some bolts went loose and a couple of the bolts snapped, so my subframe came loose in the middle of a ride. I blame that on me using a top box. So I avoid using the top box now. I've had an issue with the tank, with some corrosion on the pipe inside the tank. That was quite disappointing. It looks like it was just like on the weld line for the pipe. It's basically the pipe that takes the evap down to the evap box. So the fuel started leaking out of that. Thankfully, it didn't cost too much to replace. And I've just done my valve clearance checks because I'm about to go on a trip to Scotland. And 10 valves needed shimming. All of the exhaust valves needed shimming, and 2 of the intakes. But I like the bike. I get on with it. I have a look around every now and again at other bikes, and I just in my head do the thing that says it's not that much. It's not that much better than the bike I currently have, and so I'm very cautious in terms of moving on to the next one. And for me, it's more financially sensible to just keep the bike I have, keep it going. It's already lost all the value it's going to lose. So it's kind of free motoring at the moment in those terms. Obviously, you have to pay for the maintenance and to fix any of those things. But to upgrade to a bike, a more modern bike, would cost considerably more money. And I don't have a lot of money right now. So there you go.
Say about the top box being, you put the top box on it, but that's what they're there for, isn't it?
Well, yes, but this
should be allowed to do that. I know we all load them. We all load our top boxes over the 5 kilogram limit or whatever, but should be able to.
Yeah, and well, apparently the guys at my local dealership said they had only seen it once before, and was with a guy who was like some kind of mechanic, and you put a lot of his heavy tools in the top box. But if you go on the Facebook groups, you even see people now offering like specially made bolts with lock nuts, so that what happens is I think one of the bolts kind of works itself loose, and then the other ones can't take it, so they snap. So
okay,
yeah, because it sits quite far off the back, then the leverage is more, right? If you put weight at the end there, it's a lot more. Whereas if you put it on the panniers, it's sort of further forward and lower down. Anyway, it is what it is. I do occasionally put the top box back on, but then I try to keep it very light.
Yeah, I used to put loads in my 300 when I had a CP 300. I used to put tubs of tire adhesive in the back, and if you open it up in first gear too much, you'd end up pulling a wheelie. But yeah, I wouldn't advise that. That's bad advice.
That's another Harley near St. Michael's, Mel.
Indeed, it is. That's my 1200T super low. In many ways, the ideal bike for me, really, because easy to get astride, because I'm short. But again, it's another bike I fell out of love with after I'd had the pipes done, the stage 1 done. That was done by an organisation called B&H Motorcycles, so kind of like the local Harley specialists. Not a dealers, but they do custom work and all that sort of thing. But after I had the stage 1 done and the whatever power commander thing that was put in it never ran right after that. It would pop and it would bang, and it was uncomfortable. On the throttle at low speed. So it was just it is a good looking bike, and it was just I just have lost the love for riding it, because it was like, particularly around town, it just felt like it was jerky and uncomfortable, and I think doing that kind of ruined it. I put on a nice air filter and all the usual sorts of things, but that sort of costs a lot of money on a Harley doing that sort of stuff. They call it the Harley tax, don't they? Cost about £1,000, I think. To do the pipes and the air filter and all that sort of stuff. And really, the bike is powerful enough. I mean, I went to Scotland on that. Went all round the Isle of Skye from Cornwall. Bear in mind, so it's about 700 miles just to get to Scotland from here. So that was quite a long trip, and it went fine. It's actually quite a decent touring bike. I think these days, for some reason, you've got to have a BMW GS or some massive great Aprilia or whatever to go touring on. The reality is you can tour on most things if you make reasonable adjustments, I think the idea of going thousands of miles in a day just kind of spoils it for me, really, because I like to be able to actually enjoy where I am. So best advice I heard on going to places was from a guy, he's dead now, he's a photographer, but he said, wander aimlessly, eat and drink lots. So you can find an awful, especially in places like France, off the beaten track. It's amazing, place. That's my Ducati Scrambler. And yet another bike I sort of fell out of love with, although in actual fact, I did briefly consider getting another one. So that had been lowered slightly. and very light bike. It's got plenty of power. 73 brake horses in a light bike is plenty. You do 120, 130 quite easily if you were stupid enough to do so. But I must admit the build quality was a bit suspect, and the prospect of the Ducati service intervals was starting to loom, because I don't know if you know about these, but these have the you have to do the Desmo thing after a certain distance, and with the old air-cooled 2-valve engines, the service interval is a lot shorter on these. So although they're cheaper to buy, they cost more to service. And when I was doing my Ducati roast video, I looked at the costs of things like, you know, some of these guys are paying $1,000 for a service, and you're thinking, well, yeah, it's all very well. It kind of, Ducati's a bit like Harley Davidson. I think if you want to get into it, you've got to have some fairly deep pockets.
Sorry, what's this servicing that you mentioned? You said Des something?
Yeah,
or something?
Desmo's serving doing the valve services, which you have to do at 7,500 miles.
Oh, right.
Because on the Ducatis, on the Phil is going to correct me if I'm wrong, and so is Andy. But on some Ducatis, if they have a Desmo engine, that means that instead of having springs to return the valves, there's a cam to push the valve up and push the valve down as well.
Oh,
so
really?
There's no spring. There's no spring.
What's so hydraulic, basically?
Well, no, it's not hydraulic. Harleys are hydraulic.
Oh, okay.
No, they're mechanically actuated, but yes, the newer ones are much longer intervals, either 15, I think 18,000 miles, which is quite a bit more reasonable. But you know, with a bike like that, you could almost be doing it every year, or certainly every other year. But in many ways, a lovely bike.
Are you going to tackle your own servicing, Phil, on yours? Because you're a mechanic anyway, so.
Yeah, I'll do the basics on it. Things like the Desmo service, I won't. I'll be getting that done by someone who knows what they're doing, because that's quite. And the belts. I mean, I do cam belts on cars, or had done cam belts on cars every single day of the week. But with bikes, I don't know. It's just one of those things where it's a little bit more precise. You know, you've also Cavalier never revved up to 16,000 RPM, so I'd rather someone who
time again,
knows
isn't
what
it?
they're doing. And time, yeah, absolutely.
Also, with a multi-strada, you've got a lot of plastic to take off before you actually get to the engine. Yeah, I think that's another thing that Ducati people are complaining about, is there's so much time just to sort of get the bike ready for servicing.
Well, that's what I did. That's what I do with mine, because the mechanic, the dealer, is very close to me. So I actually take all the fairings off, which is at least a half an hour to take off and a half an hour to put back on for them. So I'm saving an hour's labor. But I ride it down the road with no fairings, so no front indicators, just kind of naked, drop it off and then pick it up, so I can just walk home. Also, that's a fairly old photo of the checkered flag.
Well, it's not an old one; it's a modern one, which I converted to mono.
Okay.
I felt it sort of worked better. Oh, you obviously know the checkered flag, Steve.
Yeah. St. Austell, is that right?
No, it's near Liskeard.
Oh, Phil went down there with saddlebags, actually, a couple of years ago now.
Yeah, with Heath.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they do a mean double egg and chips, I can tell you.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a great
try.
That is a really, really good bike cafe.
It is, yeah. I like going there. It's a good jumping off point for other parts of Cornwall as well. So you can either go down towards Saltash or up towards Bude from there, or Callington and those sort of areas. So yeah, it's quite a good midpoint for a meetup.
Is that your sort of area of Cornwall? Is that where you roughly are? Is it?
Well, Liskeard's about 17 miles from me, and that's about another couple of miles outside Liskeard towards Plymouth. So yeah, it's very doable. It's a fairly good ride out there if the traffic's not too bad. But of course, you understand that we're approaching silly season now. So
What do you mean by that?
Well, tourists in the summertime, it's just unbearable. I met some people in Cornwall.
Hate tourists.
Yeah,
Terrible. I'm going to be visiting Cornwall next week.
I was just going to say.
Well, don't come here at the weekend because the main road is closed at the weekend near Truro. Yeah, and they're doing massive roadworks, which will be better once it's finished. But they're very, very late with it, as they always are.
Yeah, so I'm traveling on the Saturday, trying to avoid the bank holiday traffic on the Friday. And my wife is coming in the car as well. We're staying in Camelford. Then on the Sunday, I go to the Saddlebags ride. Come back. And then we come back home on the Tuesday. So we're trying to avoid the Friday and the Monday. But it will still probably be horrendous once the motorway finishes. Because that's the thing with Cornwall. There's no motorways. It's just like the closer you get, the longer it gets.
Yeah, that's right. Because you get to the border and it's still something like 80 miles to get to Penzance or something. It's a very
Thank
long
God for motorbikes, because that does make it so much easier getting through that lot.
Filtering through traffic, Yeah, so we tend to hibernate in the summertime because it's just sort of going anywhere. You get lost tourists, and in our narrow lanes, you come across one, they don't know how to reverse in their bloody great BMW SUV or whatever it is. They just sit there in the middle of the road expecting you to somehow disappear so they can get their enormous tank past you. And then they go into restaurants and they complain about everything and why doesn't anything happen in Cornwall? Well, it never has, basically. It won't happen. So this is the Guzzy, of course. I think possibly the best looking bike I've ever had, really, in some ways.
It does look fantastic.
But I think if you get an Italian bike, you've got to be prepared for a bit of overhead. And there's always something that needs doing on them.
I'm surprised Phil is so quiet because this light show has been Harleys and Chatties, and that's you, Phil. Okay, come on.
Can't see below the table, though, can you?
Okay, sorry. I thought I heard a knocking sound.
Even I got that one. God, bloody hell.
That's pretty, though. I do like that.
Yeah, so
I really like that. That's like.
And this is the current bike, the BSA, which is currently in Thor Motorcycles, having God knows what done to it. But yeah, really enjoying riding the bike. It's very tractable at low revs, very sort of easy going, well mannered. Whereas the Guzzy really did get quite jerky, particularly at town speeds. I don't think it liked E10 fuel. It was better on E5.
Was it reliable?
What, the Guzzy?
Yeah.
Yeah, the Guzzy, yes and no. Yes, reliable, but as I said, there's always something kind of on the horizon which needed doing. I could see no end of little bits which were kind of like the rubber parts were kind of like degrading. And I remember buying some washers for the tank mount for the rubber underneath the flange.
Yeah.
And I ordered them from Italy, and it took 3 months to arrive.
Oh God, yeah.
So because of Brexit, of course, makes things a lot slower with stuff like that. Got some good people there who really know their stuff. And I think if you own a Guzzy, I think it's probably best to join the club because they do know everything, about anything. And some guys there, had some of their bikes a very long time.
Yeah.
So I think if you get into that lifestyle, I think there's certainly a very strong identity to it. So.
Most Guzzies that I've seen, sadly, have always been up on the ramp. A few of them with gearbox issues, that have been up there for a little while. So, and I had a friend with one. Funny enough, I'm working for him at the moment, but he had one, and he just had so many problems. He just couldn't hack it anymore. So got rid of it. But yeah, so you get good ones and bad ones, like anything, don't you?
Yeah, I must admit, I really like the shaft drive because I must admit I do not enjoy doing chain maintenance because that is a horrible task. Whereas shaft drive, you just can more or less let it get on with it, really.
Yeah, especially if you're doing a tour and your bike doesn't have a center stand.
Yes.
Yeah.
I am thinking about a Scott oiler, just to take that particular task off me, because I'm not very good at remembering stuff like that. So
Yeah, but the oil is just dropping oil on the outside. You still have to clean it.
Yeah, that's true. But the oil coming off the chain at least keeps the back wheel covered in stuff that protects it from corrosion.
But I use chain wax. I've always used WD-40 chain wax, and I've always got on really well with that. It tends to bake on a bit harder and stay there.
Right.
But, yeah.
Well, it stays there with all the dirt, isn't it? Unless you actually clean it, and to clean it,
it does get dirty, but normally on the outside, I've never really looked at my chain and thought it's filled up with grit. I know you can't really see it, but yeah, I get on all right with it. What do you use, Phil, if you had a chain? Would you use oil or wax?
I use kerosene to clean it. And then once I've cleaned it and wiped it, then I use Putaline chain lube. It's clear and it tends to stick. And once you've done your first ride and it's flung it, it's got spare over the back wheel, you've cleaned it off and it's pretty good then after that.
See, that's another reason I use chain wax. It doesn't fling, and it's more suitable for all sort of weathers. If you're going out on a rainy day, it's going to pretty much hang in there and hold on. But
the thing is, everyone's got a different theory, haven't they? I mean, a lot of people say don't use kerosene because it attacks the O-ring and X-ring the chains. But then you get people and say, well, no, it doesn't. It's actually oil-based, and it's hard to know. Some people say don't use WD-40. I've used WD-40 to clean the chain many times, and it's caused no problems whatsoever.
Yeah,
I think as long as you do some maintenance.
Yeah, there's a lot of urban myths. There's a lot of urban myths around all of this stuff. I think everybody, whether it's Bennett's, Bike Social, or Fort9, have done plenty of tests showing kerosene doesn't do anything to them, WD-40 doesn't do anything to them, and the best thing is clean it with something. Kerosene is perfectly fine, and put gear oil. And I've years ago I bought a bottle of gear oil, and that's what I put with a toothbrush. I borrowed my wife's toothbrush, and then I put gear oil on the chain, and then put the toothbrush back. And
gave it back. Yeah.
You mentioned Fort9 channel. That's one of my favorite channels, Fort9, and I love watching his videos. But he's actually had a lot of bad press recently because he came up with a stupid video where he states about not putting armor into your jackets and trousers, and he's had a lot of backlash over that, and quite necessary backlash, to be fair. For anyone who says they don't need armor in their clothing, I think you're living on Cloud Cuckoo land.
I think what he actually said at the end was he's not going to get rid of the armor he puts into his clothing. So it was like separate body armor, wasn't it? I think what he was supposed to be having a go at is the stuff you get on the knees or on the elbows, which a lot of the times isn't really up to scratch.
I think he made some really good points about the fact that the legislation is being influenced by the lobbyists from the people who actually manufacture the clothes to be to a certain standard. What I think he was saying is it could be a high standard. I also disagree with it. You have to take it in parts, right? I disagree with not putting it on. I'm all the gear all the time type of person, and even if it may not stop my bones from breaking, but it will certainly diminish the bruising. But I think the points he was making is that the legislation could be better in terms of what you have to. You could have a higher standard. You could have a higher standard.
Let's face it, he's running off a script as well. It's not down to Ryan, is it? He's got a script. He's a presenter.
No, I think, and I think ultimately, at the end of the day, you do what you want. You want to ride without it, that's fine with me. It's your own skin, it's your own bones.
Riding a motorbike is
not knocking him. And his videos are some of the best out there. And I think he does a lot of research in his videos, and a lot of them are pure entertainment and brilliant at what he does. But I think that one was kind of sensationalist and unnecessary.
Well, if it stimulated debate, then maybe it's done a good thing ultimately. Because as Angelo says, if we're all sort of thinking we're getting good protection when we're not, then probably things need to change. Because I don't want to have any more accidents. The last one was in 2004, and got a broken leg on that time, 3 broken ribs, and went flying through the air, ripped the side of a car off, and then landed on me. But I was reasonably well protected. But certainly, I've had accidents even at low speed. 10 miles an hour, you hit the deck, and if you haven't got protection on, friction burns really bad.
I'll tell you what, I'm seeing an awful lot of now, and there's a lot of it with young riders. And I see it's only the other day I saw 2 young riders on 125s. I'm assuming they're 125s, learner motorcycles, and they both had RST jackets on, which, to be fair, minimum 180, 200 pounds for a leather RST jacket, and then joggers and trainers. And you think you're better off actually not spending all your money on a jacket and get a little bit of maybe slightly less name branded quality stuff across the entire body, because you see it all the time. And it annoys me. Joggers, trainers, it doesn't bear thinking about. Minimally solid denim.
You should go to India or Brazil.
Yeah.
Well, in India,
off the beach, pair of flip flops on, bathing suit, off you go. But put a helmet on.
In India, they ride with bare feet sometimes. I've seen him riding with bare feet. But I saw a guy yesterday, 2 up on his motorbike with his girlfriend behind him, both wearing shorts and sandals, I think.
Listen, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. That's fine. Protection. The law requires you to wear a helmet, and that's the only thing it requires. Everything else is up to you. What really annoys me is hang on a second. What really annoys me is when you've got a biker and he's in full leathers, fully protected, and his girlfriend on the back has only got some leggings on and trainers. That annoys me, because it's like, mate, you're looking after yourself, but your
girlfriend's going to go flying down the road.
Yeah. Sorry, Steve.
No, mate. No, you know what I'm like. There's an argument for getting too hot as well, though, isn't there? And people passing out and things like that. That's something to consider, because I don't think that's brought up enough. Because I've had times, and I remember when I had the BMW RT for a day, and it was a roasting June day, and I was one of those all the gear all the time type of people. Still am. I relax myself sometimes, but I was so hot that day, and I was trying to hydrate myself. It was one of those days where I was drinking, but I couldn't keep up with the amount I was hydrating. And there's a couple of times where I thought, I need to get back in the shade. It's one of those days. So I'm not saying it's the right thing to do not to wear it, because it is the right thing to wear it. But at the same time, there is a big downside that not many people talk about.
Yeah, it's not a single rule. You got to use your noggin. You got to balance it. If you're going to be so uncomfortable, it's going to distract you, then it's unsafe, right? So it's not. There is no you must do this. But nowadays you can get enough vented gear. You can get those shirts that are perforated, which just have the armor and the mesh, which is the armor, and that will keep the airflow.
Please put Peaky's comment up.
Huh?
Please put Peaky's comment up.
Oh yeah, that one.
Yeah, that's it. Perfect.
All the gear, all the time.
Anyway, what's this hot weather stuff? What's this hot weather? We don't have it in Cornwall, me Anson. We has rain, me Anson.
Hang on a second. Every time Phil sends me a photo of the weather in the southwest, it's I can't distinguish it from a Caribbean island. So don't tell me that it's not always.
That's what it's like. Yeah, it is like that. It's
no
true.
worries. Was it Weston-super-Mare near there? I visited that last time I went up to see my mum. And it's like flat as a flat thing on a flat day with a side order of flat things.
That's why it floods all the time.
You must have gone past and ended up in Clevedon.
No, I went to Breen Beach of all places. I think that's where they do speed trials, isn't it?
Yeah.
Quite interesting, but
that's something. That's something I want to come and watch at some point.
Back in a minute. Need a week.
Right, Andy.
Right, we can talk about him now.
Yeah, if we can talk about Steve now.
We tell him to his face. I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah, so let's change. Since we're going to talk about Steve, and we should talk about mental health.
Yes. So, obviously, I'm actually. Sorry, I'm actually a mental health.
I was going to say.
So I work with people with serious mental health needs, have done for the last 20 odd years. I'm about to retire later this year, fingers crossed, following wind and all that. So, kind of ask me anything about mental health. I've worked in most spheres, everything from kids through to old age, which is what I'm doing now. Seen it all, done it all, got the T-shirt, facing burnout, because you see things and hear things and do things other people don't do. So I always tell people, they say to me, oh, I could do what you do, couldn't we? And the actual answer is no, you couldn't, because it takes a special kind of person to do that kind of job where you're faced up against the most real of situations. I see people who, if they've got what I'm looking for, they have a terminal illness, it's a progressive neurological disorder, which will kill you ultimately. And sometimes you will die in the most awful and horrendous way. And there's no getting around it. I've seen people who've committed suicide. I've seen, all kinds of situations. And sometimes what we do to help people doesn't help them at all. And that's kind of the frustrating thing, is awful lot of people out there in need and not necessarily getting what they should have. And sometimes there are beliefs about what you should do that are plainly wrong, or that you can get better by, like, for example, antidepressants, which are probably the commonest medication. And largely speaking, they don't work in reality. What works if you're depressed is changing things so that the thing that was depressing you isn't there, or you can learn to deal with it better. And that's a harder thing to do than get given a pill, which is what GPs do. When GPs are very keen to prescribe you medication, because what they're actually doing is prescribing for their own anxiety levels. So if you see a GP and you say, I'm depressed, I'm thinking of committing suicide, well, first of all, they should refer you to another service. And that's what I always say to people. If you really are thinking of committing suicide, then sit there, get in touch with somebody. And if you really are, and if you haven't done it or about to do it, then call 999. There's no substitute for asking for help. But these days, we give people prophylactics that we think might help them. In actual fact, the best way to help people is for them to help themselves and learn to do different things. Certainly with depression, there's a whole gamut of things that are out there that people suffer from. And some of them are very treatable and curable, and others aren't. So,
but that's the awful reality, isn't it? Change is very difficult and scary, right? Changing anything, changing your opinion about something, changing your life habits, it's actually quite challenging and quite scary. Whereas we get sold the advert that this medicine will cure you, that do this and you'll get better. Take this pill and everything will be better. Blue pill, red pill. Just take a pill or some other substance. Take some drug, prescribed or otherwise, and your life will be better.
Well, I remember my consultant saying to me a couple of years ago, we were in a meeting, which we do every week, and we decide what to do with patients. And he said, well, what poison are we going to give them this week then? Because in actual fact, a lot of the medicines that originated originate well outside the psychiatric milieu. So diazepam, for example, originated as a poison for mice.
Lithium.
Lithium is toxic. Causes all sorts of nasty things you don't really want, especially after 40 years of taking it, like a lot of people have. Most of the antipsychotics are pretty horrendous in side effect profiles, and that's why you have to have specialist people supervise them and monitor them. Gabapentin used to be called the truth drug, has many debilitating effects. Amitriptyline is lethal in overdose. A lot of the antidepressants have very undesirable side effects, like making you more depressed or causing you to be agitated or hallucinate. Physical side effects, growth of man boobs, restless leg syndrome, tremors, shakes, undesirable mouth movements, all kinds of things. But on the other hand, it's probably on balance better if you taking medication as prescribed rather than not taking it or starting it, stopping it, and so forth, because that's when things get much worse. We would, lots of people have taken a lot of medication and they don't really know why they're taking it or what it does to you. Yes,
it scares me when you hear something like that, because in my experience and opinion, which is very limited, if you give someone who's clinically depressed an antidepressant, there's a massive risk that they will have a fear of coming off that antidepressant because they don't want to go back to being clinically depressed, which makes them actually addicted to it without it being an actual medical addiction. It's a psychological addiction.
You're describing what we call a vicious cycle. Now, in actual fact, with most of the antidepressants, effectively, once you started taking in, that's it. You need to stay on them indefinitely, really. And if they're not doing you any harm, that's the best thing to do. And certainly if you are thinking of coming off them, don't just stop them, because that can lead to rebound depression. So that's why you have a doctor and people like me to supervise the situation, and so you go off them slowly and in a measured way. And then usually what you would do, if you need to change the medicine, you would you would titrate the other one upwards as you were titrating the other one downwards, so there wouldn't be an actual gap in medicines. But perhaps, what you really need to be thinking about is how has that vicious cycle come about? And usually and what you just described there, Phil, is a classic one of thought. So the thought is, if I stop it, something bad's going to happen. That leads to a feeling of fear, maybe anger, maybe sometimes even shame that you can't do it. It leads to a behavior of you keeps on taking it. And so the situation keeps on going. So that vicious cycle goes round and round and round, but it can also go around the other way. So it can start off with the behavior, it can start off with the emotion. And those sort of things are very, very common. And that's why we have things like therapy. So I'm a qualified therapist as well. So this is where cognitive behavioral therapy chimes in. So what you do is you examine what the person is doing, what their beliefs are about it, how strongly they believe those beliefs, and then you start chipping away. So you say, okay, so you believe that if you stop taking your antidepressant, something bad will happen to you. How much do you believe that? And the person will say, well, 90%, 95%. Okay, that's quite high. So what can we do to find out how that can be changed? So you then embark on maybe some experiments to see, well, okay, so do you know anybody who's been taking antidepressants? Have they stopped them? What's happened there? Get them to do things to find out for themselves what the actual truth is. Well, why don't you go on the website and find out? Look at the manufacturer's instructions. Let's talk about it next session. So the person goes off, does these experiments for themselves and finds out, well, actually, it's not really quite as bad as I thought. People have come off these things. And yeah, as long as they do it properly, that's better. So next time in the session, you'll be saying, well, how strongly do you believe that? Well, it's maybe dropped a bit. Maybe it's 60%. Okay, so we need to do a bit more work on it. So you can then work on those beliefs and thoughts and emotions. Usually what happens is people who are in situations like that have situations which happen beforehand that cause them to be in this situation. So they might have had their mother been taking an antidepressant, stopped it, and might have committed suicide. So the belief there is very strong, isn't it? If you're not taking it, something bad will happen. But then you get them to say, look at the statistics. How many people have committed suicide after stopping antidepressants? Well, probably quite a few, actually, but maybe there's an awful lot more people who stop them without committing suicide. So you can look at all the evidence on one side, so you draw up a list. This is all the things for that belief, and those are all the things that challenge it. And you actually work out, well, actually, my belief isn't really that realistic after all. There is another way of looking at it. So you can change the beliefs and the thoughts and emotions. But it does take a bit of work. And it takes motivation. You can't just do it. It's not something, it happens usually over 6, 12 or more sessions. That's quite a lot of work. And somebody
resources.
Yeah, exactly. And the NHS, generally speaking, doesn't have the resources for everybody.
There's a comment from Pika here. He's been told before to just stop and have no meds for some weeks to clear the system.
Well, that can be done as well. And if somebody's getting toxic side effects, toxicity from medication. That can happen, but it's usually only under medical supervision. Certainly if you are under your psychiatrist or your GP. I mean, usually that sort of thing. If you've got mental health needs, that's usually only done, in secondary care services rather than primary care. GPs don't have the expertise. They don't know about these things. They have limited knowledge. So we need to advise them what the best thing is to do. And if somebody is in a precarious situation, then you have to start thinking about the risk. What if you do this? What if you don't do that? Right. And that's when it does get quite complicated.
Well, I mean, talking about toxicity, right? One thing I've learned is that in the wrong amount, anything is toxic to you, right? I mean, when I was studying the technical side, because I used to do quite a lot of diving and technical diving, I know that, for example, oxygen is toxic to you. You can't have 100% oxygen
no
for a long period of time. They have to take you off it, because otherwise it starts really badly affecting your lungs. So oxygen, which is something you need to survive, but in the wrong amount, too much of it will tox you up. But then what I really wanted to say is, going back to what you're saying, there's usually something that's causing it. And isn't drugs, giving somebody drugs, just treating the symptom rather than treating the disease, treating the cause? Because ultimately that's what you need to do, isn't it? In my mind, and I'm a completely layman, so tell me to shut the fuck up if I'm going wrong. You give somebody drugs to treat some of these symptoms, so that they can find a way to deal with the underlying cause and not be on medication forever, right?
Yeah, that's spot on, absolutely.
I mean, Stu was saying here, I re-educated myself on how to deal with anxiety. I started to be able to identify the triggers and adjust my lifestyle and behavior to ease it.
Exactly right. That's perfect. That's a man who's learned some things. So well done there. That was just exactly what you needed. Oh, I'm frozen. Yeah. So I think realizing an issue in the first place is exactly what you have to do. So with all problems, there's a model called states of change, which states that with some things like addiction, so alcohol addiction, there are several states you need to go through before you can even start going off, stopping alcohol or drugs or whatever, and sometimes you have to get down to a really dark place before you can do it. So, there's a pre-contemplation, contemplation, making the change, and then failing and then going back. And I think the research shows you, I think addicts take 7 goes to kick habits. So things like smoking is very powerful. Alcohol is very difficult to kick.
I mean, am I right in saying, it's something that could be another myth, am I right in saying that of all the addictions you could have, so if you have like a heroin addiction, you could go cold turkey. If you have a nicotine addiction, you can go cold turkey. But apparently if you're a certain level of alcoholism and you're drinking a certain amount a day, you cannot simply stop, because you would actually kill you.
It would kill you, yes. You would have fits, and that's why we used to admit people into hospital to do controlled detoxes. What we put them on was a very strong tranquilizer, which we've sort of weaned them off gradually over time. But I've seen people who, they kind of lose sense of reality. They see hallucinations of cats and horrible things, coming off alcohol. But if you stay on alcohol too long, you end up with something called course alcoholic dementia, which is really, really not very nice at all. It's like an exaggerated form of Parkinson's, very bad movement disorders, it's your brain basically. So yes, alcohol is a seductive thing, because on the one hand it makes you feel better, on the other hand it has long-term health consequences if you take it too much and take it for too long in all sorts of ways. But lots of people can be dependent mentally on alcohol. The classic case being the sort of stressed out person who just has to have a drink, otherwise they can't get through the day. And we probably all
in my limited opinion, and I'm no expert, of course, but it's almost like the pills are the ones which numb things and take away the sharpness of it. But in between time, what seems to work is like the NLP, hypnotism in some circumstances as well. What's your view on that?
Hypnotism.
Yeah.
No, I don't think it's a particularly effective form of therapy, but there are quite a few types of therapy which are effective. Generally speaking, it depends how deep-seated the problem is. So a lot of times, as I've already mentioned, a lot of people who are facing problems like addiction particularly, or even anxiety, there is a reason why they are like that. And many of these things happened in youth or in childhood. So episodes of what you call trauma, and trauma can be a variety of things. It can be, if you're a motorcyclist witnessing a horrible accident. I had a friend who witnessed a really nasty motorcycle accident. You get PTSD, but you can get trauma from witnessing your mother getting beaten by your father. You can get trauma from all sorts of ways. At school, I saw a chap recently, and he said he was really traumatized at school because not only do they use the cane and all that sort of stuff, but he recounted that the deputy headmaster would stand on a chair and jump off the chair to hit him on the way down, just so he could get maximum force doing that. So, how do you sort of deal with that kind of trauma, which was, in his case, probably about 60 years ago, more than 60 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
The longer back it is, the further away it is, the more work it takes to deal with trauma. And sometimes just bringing up the subject of trauma can be traumatic in itself. So that's when you have to have boundaries. So in therapy, you have boundaries. You don't talk about things outside the therapy room. You don't sort of allow your own personal things to come through. If you're a therapist, that person should feel protected in that environment, so they feel they can talk about things they wouldn't. So if you were down the pub with your mates, you wouldn't come out with, "Oh, I'm feeling really bad today because I had a nightmare about my childhood." You just don't do if you're a boat. You just get on with it and have another beer or six. That doesn't really help in the long run because you wake up with the same problem that you went to bed with. So
plus a hangover.
Yes, and damage to your liver, which is not really helping you, is it? So yes, props like alcohol, smoking, drugs, and all that, the temporary help, but they actually become their own problem. They spiral out of it. I've got another friend who looks like the archetypal sweet middle-aged woman. Yes, she has a really bad, ragingly bad alcohol problem, and is up before the courts in a couple of weeks' time because she was caught drink driving for the third time. Now, I know as bikers what we all think of drink drivers, don't we? But on the other hand, there is a very good reason for why she's doing it, and I won't reveal that because that would be breaking a boundary. But this is often the reason why people do stupid things, which goes back to whatever things. So there's a lot more
like
to
with a lot of trauma. It turns into self-sabotage, doesn't it? Over the years.
Yeah.
Whether it's drinking or any sort of addiction, it's that it seems to always go that way. Yeah.
So intentional self-harming behaviours are very, very common in all sorts of ways, and I've seen every single possible variance of self-harming behaviours. I won't go through the list because it's a very, very, very long one about how you can harm yourself. Obviously, perhaps the one that gets most notice of all is anorexia. Dealing with anorexia, that's really hard. That is really hard. So I've worked with a few anorexics in my time. It's hard going with them. It can be changed, but yes, it requires those sorts of things, which are really, they require specialist services that are tailored to the people who've got those needs. Self-harming behaviour can be very distressing, especially if they're witnessing, and they're often doing it for a reason. So if somebody cuts themselves in front of you, which I've seen, a lot of it is what they call a projection of something inside you. So they're trying to get rid of something unpleasant inside themselves and give it to you. That's a projection. So sort of psychological defense mechanism, because they can't cope with what's inside them, the very bad things. That's what makes those people do those sort of really ridiculous things. That you think, well, why would you do that? I can think of all sorts of examples of people doing really extreme things to themselves and to other people sometimes as a result of just not being able to cope with internal distress. And that's why you get. I mean, I had an episode on the road. I don't know if you saw that. You guys saw that post, which I put up in a couple of places. But I was behind a guy at traffic lights in the car, and the traffic lights went green. He failed to move off because he was fiddling with something in the front seat of his car, not paying any attention. Beat me horn. So he immediately gets out of his car and starts having to go at me. You know, normally you would just put your hand up and say, all right, I'm moving off. Or you might feel a bit grumpy, but to get out your car immediately and start threatening you, tapping on the windscreen, you know, going, you know, people, there's some dangerous people out there that,
Yeah.
you just don't know what's out there.
There is unfortunately, I think, a rise in that. I also received a little bit of a road rage incident. I won't say much more because police are still dealing with it, but thankfully nothing bad happened to me. But what about, I wanted to ask you, Andy, because we have this this law in community that, you know, motorcycle is good for my mental health. To what extent is that kind of true, and to what extent it's a bit of a myth?
Well, I think it's good for my mental health. I find myself being, it's just much more like mindfulness. I think mindfulness is very well known now, isn't it? I think in many ways, when I'm on my bike, I'm much more in the moment than when I am in doing other things. Even when I'm driving my car, I'm probably thinking about something I should be doing. But on the bike, it happens much less. I'm kind of much more in the moment. You know, I can forget about all the other stuff and get on with things. It's not a complete cure-all by any means, but I mean, with my bike in at Thor, every time I see a bike or a picture of a bike, I'm going, oh, what did we ride on? You know, especially when the weather's been good. It's like,
so it can be used as a way to sort of, if you're in a cycle, if you go out and you're mindful when you're riding, it kind of breaks that cycle and it allows you to reset.
Yeah, that's the idea of mindfulness. Is you allow things to be what they are. You know, the kind of classic thing being you listen to your meditation because, you know, that thought is just floating on by like a cloud in the sky. You know,
the power of now.
Yeah, you can hear the sounds in the background. You just notice that there's a bird, you know, tweeting away, or that there's a lorry riding by, and you notice it, but you don't pay any attention to it. You let the next sound. It takes a bit of work to do mindfulness meditation. So I know one friend who's really, really good at it. I do it occasionally, but probably not as often as I should, to be honest.
Okay, there's a comment here from Peaky saying, I got told that his tattoos are classed as self-harming.
Yeah, well, we're not unless there's a picture of something like sort of how you intend to assassinate Donald Trump, although that would be probably a good thing.
That's what he's got.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Anything self-harming if you do it to excess. I think that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, I've seen some ridiculous self-harm scars. I mean, like literally people with their arms completely covered in scars, completely covered, not just a few, but literally hundreds and hundreds of scars all over their arms, and in other places too, and in fact in every possible place you can think of.
Covering up. Yeah.
What about,
well,
I've seen, oh, sorry.
Yeah, carry on.
What I was going to say is quite recently there's been quite a surge in, I've seen a lot of mental health motorbikes, and you can become like a mental health first aider, where you can take a course to sort of help you identify and provide mental health first aid to somebody. And you know, they did a webinar through the IAM as well, where they were presenting it to a lot of people, and we're thinking of sending a couple of our observers on that, so that they can, you know, they can see if we have anybody on our rides that can be, we can identify something that help can be offered. What do you think of that?
I think it's a damn good idea. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go for it. I think you know, the more people have an awareness of when people are suffering, because typically people in motorcycling, which are mostly men, don't really talk about their emotions, but you can tell if somebody's become withdrawn, or they've perhaps become more aggressive, you know, riding too fast, you know, not talking to people, and dropping little comments, you know, you think, oh, what does it say that for? You know, well, I'm not here for that. I'm going to do this well. And things which are different. And I think, yes, you can learn that sort of skill. And if you do pick it up, yeah, absolutely fantastic. I think more organisations should do it, definitely. What's it saying about the symptoms? It triggered my addictive personality. A person experiencing it would class it as self-medicating. Yeah, self-medication does happen quite a lot. Certainly, I've met people who used alcohol to medicate strong emotions, and other drugs too. And yes, it has a pitfall, because of course you feel worse once the medication wears off, or the drugs wear off, or whatever it is you've done. I mean, typically, of course, in motorcycling, extreme behaviour, so like riding much too fast, taking the sort of risks that you really shouldn't, overtaking in the places where it's stupid to do so, in a way, almost tempting the risk, almost sort of provoking it somehow. So yes, it does happen in motorcycling, definitely.
Okay. Right. Anybody in the chat has any more questions? But whilst you're getting the questions in, we touched about on this at the beginning, and I'm coming from London on my Himalayan next weekend, on Thursday, and I'm going to be traveling through Devon, and then I'm going to be staying in Cornwall, in Camelford. And I'm very mindful of the sort of I don't want to start any kind of incidents. I'm very mindful of the local customs and traditions when I go, and I don't want to upset any of the natives.
So you should be.
But I do like my cream teas. I do like my cream teas with cream first. So what advice could you give?
Hide in the bunker
Don't go.
somewhere. Yeah. Worst thing you can do, apart from eating a Ginster's pasty, that's probably the next worst thing you could do.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Can I do it at home if I'm close the curtains and stuff?
God, certainly not.
Right.
God, Lord, we're reporting you to the Gorsedd. There'll be.
I think I'll have to have a cheese scone instead.
Can I drag it back down again, back to mental health?
Yes, please.
Yeah. Well, over the years, Andy, I guess you've been doing this. Are you a mental health nurse? Are you happy to say?
I'm an RMN. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you've been doing that a long time, right?
Mm-hmm.
How has things changed over the years? Because mental places have closed down, hospitals have closed down, etc.
Care is now largely in the community. I mean, over the last perhaps 30 years, the old asylums, of which there is still, the remains of one in Bodmin called St. Lawrence's. I mean, they were very big organisations. In those, there were thousands of people there. They were self-sufficient. They grew their own crops, did their own laundry, maintained the place themselves, completely self-sufficient. And there were some good things about them, but of course they were institutions. And people who went into them became very heavily institutionalized, and then, of course, wouldn't be able to function out in the community because everything was done for them. Well, just like we were talking earlier about institutions like the army, similar sort of thing, really. Very rigid schedule. Life is organized for you. You do this group, that activity, work at a certain time every day at the same time. And when that happens, people lose. And there's a very good book written about it called Institutions by a chap called Irving Goffman. It's just the standard text on this. And you can still see it happening today. Like, for example, my mother went into hospital because she's 90. She had an infection and was delirious. And literally within 2 days, they're kind of like, they're feeding you. They're calling you darling and love. And, they're putting you in a chair and they're not allowing you to do this. They're not allowing you to do that. It still happens today. So yes, things have changed, not always for the best, because of course we're massively under-resourced in mental health.
I was going to say, yeah,
massively.
Things for the worse.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We get neglected completely. Us and learning disabilities neglected because, of course, all the money goes on, the new child unit, wherever it was. There was one opened up recently, wasn't there? A new child unit in Devon somewhere, wasn't it? Yeah. And so money goes elsewhere. And of course, the thing is, then when somebody who's mentally ill stabs somebody, you get all this weird publicity. And I grind my teeth when I hear somebody described as a schizophrenic, shouldn't be using those terms these days. If somebody's having a psychotic breakdown, they're not schizophrenic, because terms like that kind of used harmfully actually make out the people with mental health problems be the problem. The problem is the way society treats people with mental health problems, not the other way around. So I get very, very cross about things like that. So, and we all know somebody like that. I had a school friend who was very badly psychotic. He was a brilliant artist, had a scholarship and everything, but he put all his clothes and belongings on the main railway line in Peterborough, and he was institutionalized. He just became part of the system, just taking antipsychotics, and so we need to do better. We need to improve services, because everybody will have some mental health problems at some point in their life. Quite a few of the people watching this have done, and even I've had times when I felt pretty down. My health has not been good the last few years. I suffer with a condition that makes me have very little energy in the afternoon and onwards. I've got celiac disease, I've had a stroke, my health is not good. And there are times when I've been quite down about that, because, I just feel like there's a lot of things I want to do, but I can't, I can't put out a video every week because I just don't have the energy. I can't go on long distances because I worry about the planning of it and all that sort of thing, So we all have mental health needs, some more than others, of course, but most people in the population will suffer from either anxiety or low mood at some point in their lives, and then all the other illnesses like the psychoses, the personality disorders, ADHD, bipolar, all those sort of things. There's still quite a lot of them about, and many people are struggling to get by with minimal care and support, sadly.
Yeah, and then you get, I don't know if it was the issue, but very near to where I live, there was a couple of weeks ago, there was the incident with the guy who stabbed the little boy. He went on a bit of a rampage with a sword, an actual dual Brazilian Spanish citizen.
Yes, I remember that one. Yeah, it was definitely a breakdown of care there, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, to me, it sounded like a mental breakdown, just like the guy who, I was describing, I had a road raging, the guy who's tailgating me, cut into a group of bikers on a ride, all doing this speed, and then started to rage at me, and I just thought, mate, just go in front of me. We seem to have a lot of people out there with a lot of anger issues.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah, more and more pissed off people in the world. Yeah, just in Exeter that you never heard of stabbings, and there's been 2 this year already. It never ever used to happen, and it's getting worse and worse.
That road scheme that's done it though. I saw your rants after that.
It's funny, Andy. I was thinking that
it's the parklets.
Yeah, it is though. I think things like that, restricting people, stopping movement, controlling people, is actually doing the opposite, and it is pissing people off. You do feel it in Exeter now. People are more pissed off driving. They won't let you out so much, because they're stuck in these bloody traffic jams that shouldn't be there, for example. There's definitely a lot more anger around now.
Yeah, like the bloke who got out of his car and started having a go at me. I mean, he very evidently had anger issues, because not only did he do that, he also followed me when I went off after I'd had the temerity to beat my horn again. And I then actually went to the police station for safety's sake, because I was so frightened. And I was sat outside their base, and he's at it again. And then he was pretending that I'd injured him, and he was gaslighting me as well, trying to say it was my fault. I was the one who was aggressive. I was the one who. No, I wasn't. I'm 5'4", and and he was like a big bloke, and he was trying to tell me all these things.
Yeah,
mind you, the police.
And you have to be fair, you have some skills to be able to deal with that. If that was somebody a bit more timid, that could have really messed them up.
I put my phone on record, and I just kept very calm and said, "Look, I'm recording this. I've got dash cam footage of you. This is what happened." And I didn't. And eventually, the police came out, and they were having none of it. They kind of said, "Oh yeah." So they got it sorted out pretty quickly. But people they take liberties, don't they, these days? They sort of feel like they can get away with it. Very sad.
I remember you made a video on that, didn't you? Was that when you was on holiday, Andy? Was it? Is that right?
I can't remember which one was that.
Something happened when you was on holiday or something?
Can't
Don't
remember
know.
that one.
Anyway, no, it's a little way back.
Yeah.
A few months back now.
Oh, congratulations for watching one of my videos anyway.
Oh, I've watched a few, mate. I've watched a few.
I know you have, and you've been incredibly helpful to me, and thank you very much for the assistance you've given me, helping
Anytime.
to sort of,
I know you do it back to me, so it's fine.
yeah.
No problem.
So there's a comment from
Pleasure.
here about teenage mental health.
Oh God, yes.
Are you seeing that?
Well, I am. I used to work. I worked for the university for a year, and that was a terrifying experience because I already mentioned things like anorexia and stuff like that. Huge outbreaks of that at the university, and also they were recruiting staff for the mental health team because they had suicides, and they weren't in any way caring about the students. What they were caring about is maintaining their income, which each student brings in all this money, and they were just caring about defending their reputation. So, they're heartless institutions these days, universities, because they're just about squeezing money out of kids so they can build their big campuses and, their research projects and all this sort of stuff. Kids have got, they've got the social media, so all the Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, TikTok, and all that sort of stuff, putting pressure on them. So back in the day, when I grew up, there was any of that stuff, none of it at all. And the kids are getting people saying on their looks and their how they are, and that's led to a massive outbreak of the kind of self-harming and the the weight problems and the eating disorders and all that other sort of stuff that just never used to go on when I was a kid. We had our own problems, but nothing like that. Gosh, yes, it is really, really different now. And in some ways, I'm very divorced from it now. But yeah, I can see that the kids, from the moment they get their first phone in their hand, got this sort of weapon of social media outpouring at them all the time. There's no break from it. 24/7. Heck, I've got my phone in front of me. Yeah.
And they know exactly how to get you hooked. The algorithm knows exactly what will keep you looking and scrolling and looking at the phone. And it's usually the easiest way to get somebody to stay engaged is to make them angry.
Yeah, and that's true on YouTube as well. Actually, the videos I've made that have done the best are the ones which are a bit controversial, and then that sort of unlocks the trunk of emotions, and people are saying all sorts of really horrible things to you, and you just slightly controversial. Like I sent a video of the Hunter 350, I think I did, and I said brutally honest review. Then I got lots of brutal comments as a consequence. But I went out in the end because I got lots of views. So it was like, well,
yeah,
actually,
but that is the meaning, isn't it? It's there to stir up emotions, and that is what sells papers, for example. Is negativity, unfortunately, because it gets people angry. It gets them energized, doesn't it? That's the way it works. Sadly, I turn it all off now. I don't watch the news. I think it's all a load of shite anyway. And it is very how they want us to see the world, which is wrong. It's all basically bollocks, really, isn't it? It's not what's going on. So I switch it off, and as I learned many years ago, be the guardian for your own mind. So I switch all that shit out of it now.
It's a good point there. It's a good point there. I'm just trying to work out what the Pinky Biker's saying here with that PTSD and mental health. Rather than a normal just having a moment. Yeah, I think sometimes people can end up with labels they really shouldn't have. So once the label is attached, it gets stuck on very firmly. Yep. Things like PTSD. I'm sorry to hear you girls have got problems. I hope you guys can work through them and get some help with that. I mean, there is something called family therapy, actually, which I think is a very effective tool, but it's quite difficult to access. But your local mental health services, or certainly there should be some access to it if you feel that it would benefit you, and it sounds like it might do. So that's one tip there. Try family therapy. That may well help all of you guys.
Yeah, and I found as well a couple of years ago that Facebook, and especially at the time Twitter was so negative, and every time I opened it, it was something that would exactly as Stu was saying, is you get into the doom scrolling, and you're just getting angrier and angrier and more negative. And in the end, I think it was I copied Phil, because Phil was saying, I just deleted the app from my phone, and I said, that's a good idea. I'm going to do the same. I'm just going to get rid of it, because every time I got a notification, every time I opened it, it was like it would suck time out of my life, and you would just make me more angry and more depressed.
Yeah, I must admit, I watch too many YouTube videos, but I still don't watch all the ones I probably should. So I end up getting down rabbit holes watching.
And it's a bit of a gap, isn't it? Because you obviously, I mean, nowadays I mostly use social media to promote my videos, right? So I got a new video, you got to put it out on Facebook, you got to put it out on Instagram, now you got to put it out on Threads. Now I'm putting it out on X again. Just nobody clicks on it anyway. And I need to build that box and say, I'm going to go there, I'm going to post this thing, and then I'm not going to open it again. And try as you might, it always sends you something that gets you scrolling again.
Yeah.
Got to find your happy place, haven't you? And try and stay there as much as you can. The thing is, the algorithm has learned exactly how to pull you back in. Not for me. Start saying that shit. I'm out of it. I'm gone. Yeah, I've got too many other good things to do. I'm switching off all the notifications.
That's a good point by Dewey Rides there about triggering and the dopamine cycles. It's like it trains your brain to actually want more and more of it. Those little hits every time you scroll onto and that's the short videos, isn't it? And TikTok and all those other things which are really brief, but they sort of hook you, and then you've got to go on to have another one and another one and another one. Yes. Oh God, dangerous, isn't it?
Do you think that at any point, and I've got to be careful saying this, don't panic, Noob, it's not that bad. I'm on your channel, where people were using it a bit too easy as well. This is the flip side of it. Some people were saying it to get out of what I'm speaking about, somebody that I know who's gone through, never done a day's work in his life, and he'll go from being disabled to something else. Now probably 5 years ago, they put pressure on him, and now he pulled out the mental health card all of a sudden, and they're like, can't touch you. Yeah, no problem. There's your money. Off you go. So there is a flip to it as well, isn't there? Sadly.
Yeah, people do use the phrase mental health to describe almost anything which isn't actually a definable mental health need.
And it's unfair on everybody else that has that problem as well.
Yes, because, I mean, literally, last week I saw somebody, and I can't give too many details, but somebody who was referred to me, so for an assessment of their memory, that's what I do these days, who was not only younger than me, but had been previously assessed by one of my colleagues some years ago, found not to have anything wrong with him. And even the GP's letter said, I don't think there's anything wrong with him. And somehow I ended up spending 2 hours of my time, plus admin time, plus other time, plus my secretary's time, plus having a room for that time, which I could have seen somebody else who actually had a need, which has then wasted hundreds of pounds of taxpayers' money for somebody who turned out to probably score more on the test than I would do. And thoroughly dislikable as well to boot. And, you're thinking there's a lot of people going through the system, what you call worried well, who have been filtered through because they said, oh, I think my memory's going, or I think I'm depressed, or, I'm seeing green fairies at the bottom of the garden. I need some medication. And yes, sometimes there are motivations which, the health service is riddled with all this kind of stuff, not just in mental health, it's in everything else as well. That 9 times out of 10, people are going to the GP surgery for something minor, which they don't really need to go for. If you've got a cold, don't go and see a doctor. It's a waste of time.
Exactly. Well, this same person, if I might say, he would have a little cut in his hand or a cold, and he'll go to A&E. That's exactly that type of person. Yeah,
that's wasting their time and possibly other people's time, and possibly killing somebody else outside an ambulance. Can't be seen. It gets me annoyed, very annoyed, this sort of behaviour, and it is absolutely endemic, and that's one thing we do need to change in our health services, make it more efficient, because it is chronically inefficient.
Such a big problem, though, isn't it? Such a big problem. It's
massive problem.
It's hard to get a grip of it.
It is. It's impossible to get a grip on. Governments have tried, but they just fail because it's such a massive.
Because they keep just going, there's 2 million quid, and then just letting them. Well, what have you done with it? Well, I don't know. It kind of just disappeared.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I think I was told once that the NHS has the same economy as Switzerland.
All right.
It's that big. So there are 1 million nurses working here. It's just jaw-droppingly expensive to run. But it could be run a lot more efficiently.
But finally, I mean, I've seen some reports that say that the NHS is actually more efficient in terms of money use than a lot of comparable countries. So German health services, etc. But the problem is every different party that comes in, because they're not really that different, puts another layer of managers in there rather than the people who are actually going to see you, rather than the NDs and the nurses and the matrons of this world and the doctors. It's a bunch of managers.
Well, do you know who's to fault for this? Do you know who's to blame? I'll tell you. It's Confucius. Yeah, Confucius, the ancient Chinese philosopher. What he did is he started the Chinese civil service, which is organised on a bureaucratic hierarchical system. And the British, when they went to China, realised that that system was a good one, so they adopted it for the British civil service too, and subsequently also for the health service and other similar organisations.
Noob off, for God's sake.
I'm just listening, mate. I don't know why you're pointing the finger at me.
So yes, it was designed in a way that kind of makes it hard to change, because the structures of it. It is absurd. I'm just a minnow. I'm just the scum floating on the surface. I just get on with my job and try and avoid all the politics, because there's an awful lot.
Best way. Yeah.
We're all minnows. That's the truth. We're all minnows, and we're all outsiders in this game. Anyway.
The people who have the best jobs in health are the ones almost at the lowest level. So the healthcare assistants spend most time with the actual patient, doing things with them, helping.
Yes,
the rest of us, we're pen pushing, writing prescriptions, doing interventions and things.
Care plans.
And the people actually helping the most are the domestic assistants, the cleaners, because they actually make a difference to people's lives, and they get paid the least, of course.
I think another thing. Oh, this has gone down a rabbit hole. I'll just get this one out of the way. But like my missus is a nurse, and she didn't have to do a degree back in her day, whereas now it's a lot more money to get trained up, and I'm talking tens of thousands in many cases. And it's for essentially a practical job, isn't it? I know there's a lot of stuff in behind the scenes as well, but people are being persuaded not to go into it now because it's just too much hassle, and it's the wrong way.
We can't recruit at the moment. I mean, literally, we cannot recruit. I mean, they've advertised jobs, and nobody has applied. Nobody at all. And sometimes they've been done multiple times, 6 or 7 times, advertising the same job. Nobody has applied. The reason why they're underpaid, you can't afford the housing, especially in Cornwall. When you can earn a lot more or comparable amounts doing something else.
Okay, and I'll give you another one then, which is similar to this. I'm kind of connected to the NHS with my missus, but nurses are coming out of college, applying for jobs. The jobs are there; they're screaming out for people, but they've already had their allowance, so they can't take on any more people.
Yeah, we've got recruitment freeze at the moment. A recruitment pause, they're calling it.
Yeah, what load of shite. Yeah, crazy. So you've got to suck all that up, and it's going to be your problem. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, what we're doing at the moment in my area is we're covering for another 3 areas. I think my secretary is covering for 2 other secretaries' jobs. We just don't have enough staff.
Yeah.
And the trouble is with that is that then everybody is then overstressed, overpressurized. So that's when burnout comes in, and people start going off sick. Because they just can't cope anymore. It's like a domino effect, they all go down.
Yeah.
It's
And like you,
massive.
Andy, I'm not saying like you, but in time you're going to retire, and that's another good person gone, which won't be
Exactly.
replaced. You
No.
can't replace people like you.
No, exactly.
They all what they actually want is that I think they're always trying to push us down the American model where you have to pay.
I think so.
You have to pay.
Well,
They're
the
trying to
government
privatize
has
it.
been covertly privatising for years now. All sorts of clinics and things are private now that didn't used to be. Of course, even podiatry is private now. Well, just about all podiatry and lots of things. Dentistry is going by the wayside. NHS dentists. All sorts of bits and pieces of the NHS are getting so hived off to private providers.
I mean, I only use my GP when I have something. I only go there. I avoid going only if I really think I need it. And I went online to try to book an appointment the other day, and I was shocked by there was so many offers of well, you can say GP now if you pay this fee. So I could try to book an appointment and go through the triage, but you said we can have an online appointment right now. It would only cost you 80 quid.
Well, they can't attract GPs either. I mean, even the GP salary, which is roughly about 150k or something like that, they cannot attract and keep GPs because the job is so damn stressful. Who would want to be a GP? You're sat in a chair all day, seeing people 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes, 10 minutes. That's all you've got to see somebody. And you might see somebody really complex coming through the door, and then somehow you've got to fit them in the same as the other people. So as well as all the worried well, you've got the people with serious illnesses and no time in which to do it. And that's why GPs have got such a high suicide rate, And
then it's their fault if they miss something. Yeah,
exactly. It is. Yeah. So GPs are a massive problem too. It's all the way through, right from the bottom to the top. Yeah, sad really, because I know some nice GPs, but they're all horribly overworked.
Yeah, I think the bottom line with this really is, I'm guessing most people that do have issues, it normally stems back to childhood, doesn't it? Some sort of trauma or some such thing. But if we can teach for example, sexual abuse, and that has been a big thing, which has really opened up many doors, rightly so, that of people that have been locked up for years. In their mind, they've been locking it away, haven't they? And
I've seen people, who waited 60, 70 years, and I'm the first person they've ever told about it. And I've heard some really horrendous cases, really horrendous, and unbelievably bad. And we are the ones who have to absorb it, help them through it, but it also takes a toll on us. So we get vicarious trauma through, hearing so many cases of abuse. The man whose head teacher used to jump off a chair just to whip him. The woman whose husband abused her for years and years and years, and so forth. And we're left with nothing we can do for them because it's kind of too late, and they've got all this that's been going through their lives.
But it must make a difference. And I know somebody in that very situation who's been locked up for many, many years, and I found out about it. And I would imagine that it must be a total relief for them, isn't it? They can finally move on, even though it's 60 years down the line. Do you find that, or it must make such a difference to them to offload it onto you?
I think there's a lot of things going on there. So when somebody talks to somebody like me, who's effectively a stranger, because I won't see them again, usually speaking, there is a thing called stranger on a train syndrome, or the hand on the door syndrome. So it's like they can do it because it's safe to do it, because there's not going to be any consequences for them talking about something like that. Because normally, if you were saying you've been abused, I had one patient who was abused horribly by her father, like really badly, and almost all the other people in her family, but she couldn't talk to anybody because she was the one who was pushed out of the family, because they didn't want to talk about it. So you couldn't talk about it to your family, because it was taboo. the man who abused her was a good father. You know, is well respected. So many people like that. You know, the Rolf Harrises of this world, the Jimmy Saviles of this world.
Yeah.
You know, the members
Nasty
of the Bowls Club and the Lions Club, and you know, this, that, and the other thing. But no, yeah, it's a hell of a lot of it. So yes, hopefully we help them, but sometimes I feel a bit lost that we don't have the right kind of support to give them after disclosing. We do try and signpost them onto the organisations who can help, but I think few people make use of them. There are some.
And also, is there a point as well where normally they, and again, it's just what I've heard from other people, that they start getting help, but then their time runs out, like 12 weeks or 12-week course or whatever, and that's it. They're off into the sunset. And then they can't pick it up from there. You know, they need mostly. But how long? The problem is that you can't do it forever, can you? For everybody,
no,
that's the problem.
No, you can't. I mean, standard allocation these days is 6 sessions. I think really, if you come in from primary care, if you come in from secondary care, which is a higher level, you get more sessions. But even then, you know, accessing psychological help is much harder to get at, and some of the waiting lists are scarily long. You know, child and adolescent waiting lists several years.
I know there's
5 years, I think, or now 7 years. Some of those waiting lists are really.
And it's reached a point now where there's a lot of online companies popping up who, let's be honest, they're probably not as experienced as you of dealing with these sort of things.
No,
it's almost becoming a big business now.
Selling snake oil, modern day snake oil. You know, they've got
I see them all the time. Or the
airy fairy title. You know, do this, do that. This will cure you. No, it won't actually.
No, sorry, I mean like the online counsellors. There's counsellors you can get online now.
There are some good online counsellors. I know one counsellor who does quite a lot of sessions online. If they're proper counsellors, as in registered with an appropriate organisation.
I think I know what you're getting at there, Steve. Is I've seen quite a few channels where there's paid promotions, and the paid promotion is to put you onto this app or
done, Nate. That's what I'm on about.
Or this company that will give you. And you see in the comments, if you actually go and look in the comments as well, there's people saying, "Why are you being sponsored by these people? Are these people the ones who was found to be like selling your data to other people? They were like basically extracting data from you. You go to them for treatment." And all they're doing is they're sucking up your data and then selling it to brokers. This is the situation. This is the exact situation where, personally, I wouldn't like to be in this country if they continue to like dismantle the NHS and take away the funding for these types of services, because they're spaffing your money on some other useless stuff. Just lining up the pockets of their mates or some useless track and trace that they wasted billions on, and then on the other hand, they can't staff your hospitals, your A&E, and your mental health and your GPs properly.
I think the thing is we haven't really touched on here, which is actually quite a big factor in all of this, is something called big pharma. In other words, the pharmaceutical companies are Goliaths, absolutely massive. And a lot of the agenda of what we give people for their ailments is driven by the pharmaceutical companies. And very often their research is not really of the best type. So you can do research and you can do research. The best type of research is being properly validated, properly screened, and is objective. But in actual fact, a lot of it is driven by the drug companies selling us something like, Ritalin, for example, for ADHD. That's become very, very popular recently. Millions of people on it, but it's actually quite not a very nice thing to be on, So that they're kind of selling a lot of these things, which are either poisons or they're not very good for you. They're kind of like controlling the agenda. These big companies, actually, make more decisions than governments.
There's a comment here from Stu Zedhead said GPs favor prescribing drugs that the pharmaceutical reps are pushing to them on any given week.
Oh yes, that's true. It's true. And in fact, it used to be worse than that. Certainly in psychiatry, I can remember one particular place I worked where the consultant spent more time with the drug rep than he did with any of his staff or patients. You heard him hearing getting things like speedboats, holidays abroad, all sorts of favours. So yeah, it was certainly endemic up to a point. I think less so now because some of the patents on some of the more extreme medications have expired. So there isn't so much money in it for the drug reps, but for anything new, fancy cancer drugs. There was a thing called a depot medication. I don't know if you know what a depot is, but it's something you give once every 4 weeks or thereabouts to somebody with a psychotic disorder. It's like taking oral medication, except you can guarantee they're actually taking it, so they're not going to discontinue it, and it has a sort of steady effect. But I overheard one of my colleagues the other day saying, "Oh, you've got this new thing, and it was in a box, and it's like, how much is that costing?" That's £200 a shot. Thank you very much. Just for one injection. Okay, it may be cost effective in the long run, but that's because it's on patent and it's new. Otherwise, you can get medication manufactured in India, cheap as chips.
Generic.
Generic stuff. Yeah, so the medication bill for the NHS is extortionate. Yeah, so we are in hock to many of the pharmaceutical companies and all sorts of jiggery pokery and smoke and mirrors about what is and what isn't.
That's how the world runs, unfortunately, isn't it?
Absolutely. So truth is a hard, difficult thing to get in some of these circumstances, sadly. So yes, he's absolutely bang on with that, I'm afraid.
And what it boils down to really is, us as humans, in our case as friends, whether we're online friends or whatever, we've all got to look after each other because they're not going to do it, are they? That's all we can do, really. Just be there for each other. As cheesy as it sounds, it's true.
Absolutely. Reach out to a friend. I was going to say, reach out to a friend you haven't heard for in a while. Say, are you okay? Are you really okay? Do you want to talk about anything? I've done that. I've had people reach out to me, which I found lovely. Or they said, I saw your video. You sounded a little bit down. I think that's fantastic. It's just like building having that community, having that kind of support, and being in an age now where, thankfully, if you are having those issues, there isn't that stigma anymore, or certainly reduced a lot. It's not, back in the days, like, oh, kind of man up and harden up, HTFU, right? There isn't a,
I think that has improved. There is more talking about these things, which I think is a good thing, certainly.
There's still a place for toughening up, though, isn't there? Do you know what I mean? I'm not. How do I explain this? Do you know what I mean?
You have to be resilient. You have to be
That's
resilient,
the word,
right?
Yes. And that has to be taught to kids as well, I think.
Yeah, you have to have a little bit of resilience, but that also comes from having the support of a family, community around you. You can't just be the wall holding back the tide. You need support for that. We're social animals. You can't just buckle at the first challenge. But you also need
that's exactly
encouragement and reassurance.
And a bit of grit as well, because I know I wouldn't be as good at my job if I wasn't trained the way I was, which is pretty hard. I wouldn't have changed it either. That's bad fruit. And in the harder times of my life, I've been able to get through because of that. It just seems easier.
Here's the thing, right? We've had a breakdown of the family. A lot of people nowadays grow up on single parent families, and it's usually the mother. The trouble is, right? Mother's love and father's love are very different. Okay, a mother is and I'm not saying mother as a woman and a father as a man. I'm saying we all have our mothering side and our fathering side, right? As men, as women. Just want to make that clear before I get a stick for that. I'm saying mother's love is nurturing, is protecting you, right? Whereas father's love is different. It's tougher, but it's preparing you for the real world, because the real world is unfair. In the real world, nobody's going to say, "Oh, don't worry, mate, you tried. Here, have the job. You tried. You didn't quite pass it, but you tried." Right? The father's love was going to say, "You have to do your best. You have to, and you have to be resilient, and you have to deal with unfairness." Whereas a mother will always try to protect and say, "Oh, you're wonderful, and don't worry about that. Just try harder." It's a different side. But
losing
I
at
think
sports day, for
I think
example.
we lack a lot of fathers. A lot of fathers are absent, and
Oh.
also a lot of kids, they don't see their fathers at work. My kids don't see me at work because I'll go out to the office, or I come into the office, and I go home, and they just see you at the end of the day. Whereas back in the day, or even your kids, they might have had a chance to come to work with you, right, and seeing
Something
what
to
you do.
aspire to.
And seeing, well, no, it's not that. It's they see what you have to deal with. They see what it takes to be a man. They see what it takes to be a grown up in the world, and they see it's not just you don't get a participation medal. You have to deal with shite.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to deal with adversity.
There are lots of theories about all these sort of things, personality development, but kind of the core of how people grow up to be sort of adults who are well balanced is that certainly the thinking is that you need to have a consistent childhood. You don't necessarily need two parents there all the time. You don't necessarily need a mother and a father there, but you do need consistent, reasonably boundaried upbringing as a child. So the people who fail to grow up with a properly developed personality, and we used to call those people personality disorders, we now call them complex emotional needs, because they've not learned how to regulate their moods, their emotions, their behavior, because they haven't had the consistent upbringing. So they haven't had those role models. They haven't had, it doesn't necessarily need to be a man and a woman, but it does need to have some consistent. So a good male role model could be, a teacher. It could be an older brother. It could be, but you need to have those consistent role models. So you actually kind of learn some of the rules and things about being a man or being a woman, from the people around you. And of course, if the people around you are not functioning very well, if they're taking drugs or whatever, then you're going to learn that as well. I mean, I saw another man not very long ago, and he said his mother was not a mother to him because she was an alcoholic and she did all sorts of things. But, she would take him out somewhere when he was a child and she'd just lose him. She'd just wander off somewhere. Didn't really care about him.
But by the way, I didn't say you had to be a mother. Your mother, I didn't say you had to be a mother and a father or a man and a woman. I said you need both sides. You need a nurture in the home, protect you in the home, but also prepare you for outside, because outside people aren't going to share with you. You must share your toy with your brother, okay? But sometimes you just have to let them get on with it and have some conflict and learn to deal with conflict to a certain extent.
Life skills.
Exactly. Outside world skills. You've got inside the home skills. You need to have outside the home skills.
Yeah. The people who grow up in situations where that isn't being done properly, that's where they sort of learn exactly all they see around them. If they see somebody, solving problems by violence, as in abuse, the chances are they're more likely to go on and be abusive themselves or even be a victim themselves. So,
yeah.
I've got quite a few friends that had lost their, like male friends that had lost their dads when they were younger or, sort of early teenage years. And looking back on it now, they were always lost. They never really found who they wanted to be. And even now, they're not quite, there's something missing. Do you know what I mean? They're still on that path of self-discovery because they've got no rudder, no sort of like how it should be.
Yeah.
And as humans, sometimes you do need some sort of benchmark behind you to know which way to go. I was very lucky with my dad. I had him till I was 38 years old, and he was a wonderful, kind person, lovely person. I had loads of problems, during my life, like many others, but but he kind of guided me who I wanted to be.
Yeah.
As it happens, I turned out a bit of a dickhead, but I am trying.
A trying dickhead. That's marvellous.
Yeah, exactly. That's noble, isn't it?
Progress.
On that note, another beautiful photo from Andy.
Yeah, that's my other hobby, photography. I like to take pictures of flowers because I have a degree in botany, you see. So that's my background. That's what I studied first. And that is a Spanish bluebell, in actual fact.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. It's a beautiful picture.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's not.
I thought it'd be a beautiful, uplifting image on which to kind of, as much as I am enjoying the chat, I'm looking at the clock as well.
So time's moving on, isn't it? Yeah.
And it's moved on. It's moved on really quickly because it's gone so well, and the chat's been so great. So I really appreciate.
I've really enjoyed it.
I really enjoyed it. Really enjoyed speaking to you, Andy, and Steve, and Phil. Phil sent his apologies. He had to leave because he was having Wi-Fi issues and stuff. Or right. I think actually he just got pissed off with all the sort of woke stuff that we were discussing, and he just.
I know. Well. Yeah, I've got another friend who's a nurse, and my other friends, when we're together, say, "Well, you two, you always talk shop, you do." That's true, though.
Actually, Dewey is asking whether you used a macro or a normal telephoto.
That's a telephoto lens, actually, and you can see from the background that it's very blurred out, so it's a very shallow depth of field. So what's in focus is there's just a small slice, just tiny slice. And that's why the background is so soft. And the sort of bits in the background are what they call bokeh, which is a Japanese word, but it's where the out of focus highlights just blur into a little round blob.
No, yeah, so, I love my photography as well. I don't do nearly as much of it as I should. But yeah, some in the some of the saddlebags. I'm going to bring my my EOS camera there and take it to Scotland as well. So yeah.
Well, I hope to be able to see both of you guys next week.
I'll be there.
Even if Thor Motorcycles haven't done the bike, I'm just going to collect it on the Saturday and say, right, if I break down on the way to Saddlebags, I'll just get the breakdown people to take me to Bridge Motorcycles at Exeter as the next nearest dealer.
I've got a bike you can borrow, Andy. Mine. You can have one of mine. Yeah. Yeah. What you got two, haven't you? You still got the SA and
no,
you still got the Guzzi, haven't you?
No, I've sold that.
Oh, have you? I thought you still had it for some reason.
No, right. I haven't got room for two bikes. I'm afraid I've got a one bike shed and that's it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm fortunate for that. I mean, some people don't even have a bike shed, do they?
No.
You know, I sometimes find it a bit frustrating when you see people like the all-year motorcyclist say, "Oh, I just bought another motorcycle."
Yeah, he probably has a massive barn where he keeps all of them.
Well, it's like, you know, there's a little bit of lack of insight, as in most of us can really only afford a certain amount. You know, certainly semi-retired on a nurse's salary. It's
we all work for it though, don't we? No matter how many you've got, we all do what we can, and
I don't care. Because you're on the motorcycle, I don't care what I don't care what it is. I don't care what it is.
Exactly. Motorcycle, scooter, whatever. If you ride one, I'll give you a nod every
I was working. I spent a week away working in Munich, and I was really surprised. I went out for a few walks in the evenings and on the weekends. There's a massive classic scooter scene in Munich. Like all two-strokes, Lambrettas and Vespas and stuff, like the proper, some with the patina, but definitely two strokes. So you can hear them and you can smell them. So yeah, and I loved it. We maybe want one, but anyway, that's.
Are they into the big mirrors and all that as well? 100 different mirrors and.
No, but the one that had mirrors right at the bottom, like almost on the floor.
It was like that in Sorrento when we took a holiday in Sorrento in October, and the Italians absolutely love their scooters, especially the two-stroke ones. I mean, they're not into the mirrors or anything. What they're into is looking cool on their scooters. So they like,
and they do.
They're dressed, you know. They're smart, you know. They're riding along, one hand on the bars, one hand with the phone in front of them, kid on the back, you know.
It's fantastic, isn't it? It's wonderful. Sat outside the cafe eating a pizza or whatever. Lovely.
Coffee, all that sort of stuff.
I have to say though, Noob, I'm so jealous, because when Noob went to Munich, he went to the BMW museum, and my God, mate, I would do anything to go there. I would be there all day. just looking at one bike, I expect.
You should definitely go. You should definitely go.
Oh,
you
that's
can,
like
you
a
can
job.
even do it as a day trip.
Could you? What?
Yeah.
What, from Devon to...
Flight to Munich, it's only like what, a 2-hour flight, I think.
Yeah,
Alright.
he lives in a normal place, Steve, not like us.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, hang on. Exeter's got an international airport.
It's got an airport, yeah.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it... it's opened up a lot. Yeah, I might be able to do it in a day. I wouldn't want to, but yeah.
No,
it'd be good to do a proper trip there, wouldn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's good.
That's it. That's the next bike trip over to the BMW museum.
Marvelous.
Yeah. Probably better to do a flight, to be honest. I don't think there's much to see. Well, actually, no, that's not true. They're near the Alps, so yeah, it might be good. I like Munich. Very nice. Could be a holes. You saw some of the photos. Anyway,
Right,
guys. Thank you very much. It's it's a sign of how well it's gone, actually, that we still have 4 people watching, and we're 2.5 hours into a live stream.
It's really good.
It's
a good stream.
Well, you can tell. Yeah, that's all right. I answered that question. So yeah, it was really good, and hopefully see you guys in the near future. Well, certainly next week. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. So look out for that. And I've got some. I'll be having some videos coming up. Got new tires on the bike. You can find out what that was all about, and some other stuff. So if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to Cornish Motorcycle Diaries
And
New Biker
and
Exeter
definitely
Rider.
subscribe to Steve, so that's no problem.
And even though he's not here anymore, subscribe to Western Super Motor Vlogs.
I think I am actually. Yeah, I think I am.
Yeah. Okay. So Andy, Steve, stay on for a second. I'm just going to end the stream there.
Yeah.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks everyone inside chat, by the way.
Yeah.
Cheers.